بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillah والصلاة والسلام على Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's The Jews of the Quran, Joy al-Quran. We have reached Surah As-Saffat, and Imam Al-Ghazali rahmahullah chose 14 verses, 14 jewels. Verses 1 to 11, and then 180 to 182 at the end of the surah. And we'll try, inshallah, to get a taste of the surah and all these verses, and that which is in between 11 and 180, some of the major themes that we can, inshallah, cover. As usual, sometimes we remind ourselves that this selection of Imam Al-Ghazali does not have any narrative in the sense of why he chose these, but one would assume that it would correspond to as a message to something that was going on at the time. For example, the creation theme that was almost repeated in all of the Jews that he has chosen, all these verses that he has chosen, almost in all surahs and all chapters that he chose, rahmahullah. I also reminder that we are using Muhammad Abul Qasim's translation, and we are at the bottom of page 133. There are other translations that I also use when I read. For example, I use the translation of Dr. Mustafa Khattab. Nothing in particular. One needs a translation anyhow. Sometimes I fill in. If I see something that I could contribute in terms of translation, I do that as a suggestion. And remember that every translation is an interpretation. So that's why they say the meaning of the glorious Qur'an. With the first 11 verses, let's read and then try to see what's going on in these verses. By those who range themselves in close ranks, rows, and from the exegeses that I have read, as a suggestion, it's they arrange themselves as such in prayer and worship, and by those, and of course it's about the angels and their different tasks also, including the next one, by those who restrain very sternly, by those who are constant in reciting the reminder that is revealed book. فَالزَّاجِرَاتُ الزَّجْرَاتِ has been also interpreted as those angels who are responsible for driving the clouds, where they will where their destination is according to divine will, what people, what land, what places to for the clouds to empty. It's the rain. Most surely your God is one. Inna ilahakum lawahid. These are it's qasam, it's basically oath, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes oath in things that He has created, because these are signs to be contemplated. So the answer would be and the first oath والصافات صفا فالزاجرات زجرا فالتالية ذكرا إن إلهكم لواحد. This is the answer. This is the otherwise والصافات صفا, then what? فالزاجرات زجرا, again, then what? فالتاليات ذكرا. So the answer is إن إلهكم لواحد. And who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Here we have the word ilah, also the word Rabb. رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما ورب المشارق. He's the Lord of everything. He is one. No association with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should take place. إِنَّ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِزِينَةِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. Verily we have adorned the lowest heaven with the adornment of the stars, which also preserve it against every rebellious Satan. Since the word also star is used in the Quran, Najm, Kawakib, usually it's a reference to the planets. This is the closest strain to us. There is zina and there is function, of course. Those devils, they are prohibited against listening to the higher assembly of the angels, trying to get some news. They cannot listen to the assembly on high and are pelted from every direction and repulsed. And for them is an everlasting chastisement. But if any of them snatches away something, stealth, he is pursued by a piercing flame, a meteor in flame. So ask them, meaning the disbelievers, whether it is they who are stronger as a creation, or those others, that is, whom we have created. We created them of clinging clay. So these were the 11 verses. The very last three, سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. This is also became a well-used prayer supplication to end a speech, a Friday sermon. Glory be to your Lord, the Lord of honor, above that which they, meaning the idolaters, describe of him. Peace be upon the messengers of God. All types of perfect praise belong to God alone, the Lord of the worlds. So now we try to move beyond verse number 11 and see what themes we could come across. Maybe about 10 verses, but it continues beyond this. Warning, those disbelievers, they disbelieve in the message, and the end result will be that on the day of judgment, when there's a final decision, when the verdict becomes known, they will be gathered. They will in hellfire, the wrongdoers, along with their وأزواجهم. زوج, I would take it rather literally, in the sense of it is the spouses, but it could be also since they do those who end up in hellfire, they start talking to each other about blaming each other for ending up in hellfire. They will turn on each other, throwing blame. The misled will say it was you who deluded us away from what is right. The misleaders will reply, no, you disbelieved on your own. We had no authority over you. وما كان عليكم من سلطان بل كنتم قوما طاغين. In fact, you yourselves were transgressing people. The decree of our Lord has come to pass against us all, both sides. We will certainly taste the punishment. Literally, it is about tasting. لذائقون. And some forms of punishment will be mentioned shortly, inshallah. So we have caused you to deviate, for we ourselves were deviant. Surely on that day they will all share in the punishment. That is certainly how we deal with the wicked, the criminals. For whenever it was said to them, in this world, in this life, that's the meaning, there is no God worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They acted arrogantly. They dismissed the message. They did not accept it. And they would argue, should we really abandon our gods for a mad poet, الشاعر مجنون? Of course, the Prophet ﷺ was not a poet, was not a literary figure. He was his background is very in a very beautiful way. For every human being to be described as illiterate on me will be kind of an insult, except that it is when the Prophet ﷺ is praised as a Nabil Ummi, it is a praise, and it's part of the miraculous nature of the Qur'an. No one could come up with this something like with this book, with a chapter with 10 verses, and also it shows that the attack in itself is considered to say that, so they don't address the message itself. They stick to their tradition blindly. Okay, and they said that they would not really abandon their own idols, their own gods, for a mad poet, and this is an ad hominem fallacy attack. So they leave the message and they attack the messenger. And he's neither a poet and nor mad. حاشا وكلا صلى الله عليه وسلم. Maybe like the Meccan idol worshippers, the polytheists of Mecca, who knew that it was a new phase in the history of mankind, of the people of the Arabian Peninsula. They realized that their time was done. No more they would remain that the leaders of the Arabian Peninsula. No more being the leaders of Mecca, the tribes in and around Mecca. This is why they pursued a zero-sum game following the Prophet ﷺ all the way to Medina, and people should remember this. It was the Meccans, meaning the idol worshippers, the polytheists, who pursued a zero-sum game time and again, several times, until they literally have lost it. uh, Badr, Uhud, Khandaq. Um, all of these took place either on the edge of Medina or close by. A zero sum game that when you pursue zero sum game, there is a possibility that you might win, but if you lose, this is it, and it was destined. The theme of rendering the prophets, the messengers, victorious also is mentioned in this surah. In fact, he came with the truth, confirming earlier messengers, the Prophet ﷺ, his message, confirming أن اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره. This is really the message in the Quran that all the prophets, all the messengers had for their own respective peoples until this universal message of Islam in particular. Still stressing the same theology. If any religion comes up with a different theology, then it is man-made, if you will. You will certainly taste the painful torment, and you'll only be rewarded for what you used to do, but not the chosen servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Chosen. It's not about genetics. It's not about really the form, though we have been created in the best possible form. It's about your deed. It's about your submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's about getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These they will have a known provision. Fruits of every type, fruits, and they will be honored. They will be honored in the gardens of bliss. فواكه هم مكرمون في جنات النعيم. Each facing each other on thrones, rather than a throne per se. Is surur. One might say something like literally, though it could be Sarir al-Mulk, that would be the king's throne, but it could be for something else, since really all of them who end up in paradise will have such a treat, a drink of pure. I said drink really, but obviously the context is that it is of wine, will be passed around to them from a flowing stream. Nature of this wine in the hereafter will be explained in a second, inshallah. Crystal white, delicious to drink. It will neither harm them, nor will they be intoxicated by it. And this is really very important. Though it's the same word, but it's a different nature. Nothing negative, no harm in paradise. And with them will be maidens of modest gaze and gorgeous eyes. As if they were pristine pearls. Then they will turn to one another inquisitively. One of them will say, I once had a companion in the world and in this life who used to ask me, do you actually believe in resurrection? Do you actually believe? But obviously the context is about resurrection, since it is followed by when we are dead and reduced to dust and bones. will we really be brought to judgment? أَإِذَا مِتْنَا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا وَعِظَامًا إِنَّا لَمَدِينُونَ. Remember that this is also this theme has been mentioned before um, in other chapters, and one could contemplate the idea that Imam Ghazali is responding to the philosophers who denied resurrection in Tahafut al-Falasifa and the incoherence of the philosophers. These three major issues where he deemed the philosophers as non-believers. One of them is the denial of resurrection. He will then ask, would you care to see his fate? Then he and others, of course, will look and spot him in the midst of the hellfire. He will then say, by Allah, you nearly ruined me. Had it not been for the grace of my Lord, I too would have certainly been among those brought to hell. Then definitely be selective about who will be in your company, or the other way around, whom you befriend, with whom you'll dwell. In Arabic, when they say, when they would like to indicate that something is impossible, they will say it's the fourth impossible thing. So, what are the the first three impossible things? They say الغول والعنقاء والخل الوفي. الغول is a mythical creature. العنقاء is a mythical creature, a sphinx. And الخل الوفي, this is the point, that's a loyal friend. It's almost impossible. It's not impossible, but almost. So people are misled to believe that they could have, on Facebook, you can have 5,000 friends. And it's very naive to believe that you can have such a number, even if you are sincere. Simply somebody wanted you to add them, and you just add them. I would like to move to the prophets who are mentioned in this surah. And the first one here is Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Indeed, Nuh cried out to us, and how excellent are we in responding. But his crying out, his call, his supplication was after almost 1,000 years. 1,000 minus 50, 1,000 solar years minus 50 lunar years, 951.5. We delivered him and his family from the great distress and made his descendants the sole survivors. And we blessed him with honorable mention among later generations. Peace be upon Noah, among all peoples. Indeed, this is how we reward the good doers. For he was truly one of our faithful servants, then we drowned the others. And indeed, one of those who followed his way was Abraham. وَإِنَّ مِنْ شِيعَتِهِ لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ. Remember when he came to his Lord with a pure heart and said to his father and his people, "What are you worshipping?" Of course, they used to make these idols. Is it false gods that you desire instead of Allah? إفكا آلهة دون الله تريدون. What then do you expect from the Lord of the worlds? He later looked up to the stars in contemplation. Then he said, "I am really sick." Now remember that when language, I would say that Arabic language in particular, a statement could have different meanings, and here it's obviously, I am really sick. I'm really sick and tired of you and what you worship. Okay, so it's the metaphorical sickness, allegorical sickness, if you will. فقال إني سقيم. So they turned their backs on him and went away. Then he, went to their gods, to their idols, and said mockingly, "Will you not eat your offerings?" Eating the offerings. I remember when I was in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and I ended up, there is a good sizable Chinese community in Kuala Lumpur, and the street where I lived, Jalan Klang Lama, has a pretty much, a good percentage of the neighborhood were Chinese. And they would have idols that they place in front of their houses. And they put offerings in front of these idols. And of course, every now and then they put new offerings, including cakes, fruits, and of course, they don't eat. And on one occasion, the Hindus in Kuala Lumpur were reported, filmed really, it was in the news. They believed that a specific idol was drinking milk, and there was a long queue of Hindus who were carrying small bowls of milk with a spoon, and they just fed the idol. Of course, that the milk will drip, will fall on the ground. So why would Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam ask them, "Will you not eat your offerings?" Of course, he knows that they will not eat these offerings. It's a piece of stone in this case. It could be a piece of wood. It could be a piece of iron. Lifeless. And then he followed that with another question. What is wrong with you that you cannot speak? Of course they cannot speak. Not only they cannot speak, they cannot hear. And it will be extremely problematic when you talk about those people who talk to their idols. Speak, address Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, address God directly. Then he swiftly turned on them, striking them with his right hand. Later his people came rushing towards him furiously. He argued, "How can you worship what you carve with your own hands? قَالَ تَعْبُدُونَ مَا تَنْحِتُونَ. It is Allah who created you, and whatever you do." At this stage, they built him. قالوا ابن له بنيانا. This is really they wanted to burn him alive. creating a fairness, creating a structure. They wanted to toss him into a blazing fire. And this is why Imam Al-Ghazali would, um, in his thought, he would theologically argue that fire in itself does not burn except when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills the fire to do so. So burning is not a necessary outcome. So they plotted against Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. And he later said, I'm leaving in obedience to my Lord. He will guide me. One might bring something from a different context in the Qur'an. وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ وَلُوطًا الْأَرْضَ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And we have saved him and Lot alayhi salam, to the land that we have blessed for the nations, to Palestine, to the Holy Land here. He made a supplication, my Lord bless me with righteous offspring. So we gave him good news of a forbearing son, meaning Ismail alayhi salam. How do we know? Because within a couple of verses, he is there's another good omen. سلام على إبراهيم كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عباد المؤمنين وبشرناه بإسحاق. This time the second child is mentioned directly. وبشرناه بإسحاق نبيا من الصالحين وباركنا عليه وعلى إسحاق ومن ذريته محسن وظالم لنفسه مبين. Several things from a different context in the Quran. ومن وراء إسحاق يعقوب. So the good omen came in double. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they will have a child whose name is Ishaq alayhi salam, that's exactly what will happen. And Ishaq will have a child of his own whose name is Jacob. Then that's exactly what will happen. But also it means that Ishaq will live long enough to become an adult, a man, and get married and have a child of his own, son, Yaqub alayhi salam. Which means that the sacrifice story cannot be about Ishaq alayhi salam. We believe in both, in Ismail and Ishaq alayhi salam, but at the same time, it's impossible for Ishaq to be the specified child, son, for the sacrifice, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already said that he will, before he was even conceived, that he will, before he was born, before he came to this world, that he will become an adult and get married and have a son and on his own, whose name is Jacob. So it's Ismail alayhi salam. It is Mecca rather than Jerusalem. It's Ishmael rather than Isaac, rather than Ishaq alayhi salam. And this blessing Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, Prophet Abraham and Isaac, and what about their offspring? We bless them, meaning Abraham and Isaac as well. Some of their descendants did good, while others clearly wronged themselves. Then the story of Musa and Harun, very short, and they were it's extremely short, no details. Then Ilyas alayhi salam, reminding his own people, questioning their worship of Baal, the idol. One can reflect on the word Baal in Arabic. It's also the master, if you will. It is still in use in Arabic, in Hebrew. And then the story of Lut alayhi salam. Here directly, it's short, but it says that he and his family were delivered, were saved, except for his wife, except an old woman who was one of the doomed. Why she was doomed? The wife of Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam, the wife of a prophet. Um Obviously, she approved what her people were doing. Talking about homosexuality, it's not lack of hospitality. It's about homosexuality because Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam would offer his daughters in marriage, and the men of his village, his town, they reject this offer, and they tell him, "You know what we want." And they were the first on the history of humanity to practice homosexuality. And then you have the story of Sayyidina Yunus alayhi salam, Jonah, when he was ultimately swallowed by engulfed by the whale. But it's his dua, it's his tasbih, it's his remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that saved him. Otherwise, he would have stayed in the belly of the whale until the day of judgment. This is, of course, there are many other things that one can mention from this surah, but it's, I think we have already gotten a taste of the jewels and the context from which the surah itself, Surah As-Saffat. In the next session, inshallah, I will have Surah Sad, 4 verses. Imam Al-Ghazali chose for jewels from Surah Sad. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.